Okay, we are going to cover the nervous system, health, and diseases. What conditions can affect our nervous system? So there are three main types of diseases or effects that can cause injury or conditions in the nervous system: infections or physical problems like injury, and then conditions or diseases. So we're going to talk about all three in this lecture. So first, let's talk about infection. One type of infection or example is poliovirus. And polio is usually an intestinal. You can get it through eating spoiled foods or bad water, and it infects your intestine and then travels to the spinal cord, and it destroys the nerve cells in your spinal cord, and then can cause uh, wasting of the muscles and paralysis. We now luckily have a vaccine for poliovirus, but this definitely can cause paralysis and is an infection in the spinal cord. One other type of infection, well, it's multiple types of infection, but is meningitis. Um, is it literally stands for inflammation of the meninges. So the meninges are the tissues between the skull and the brain and the spinal cord. It helps stabilize and it helps stabilize and pad the brain tissue and spinal cord. If you get an infection, it can be bacterial or viral infection. It causes inflammation and swollen tissue and can cause meningitis. And can cause swelling in this area and is really bad for the nervous system. Don't want swelling on the brain or the spinal cord. Physical injury. There's a lot of physical injuries. These are just two examples. Spinal cord injury. There's many types of examples of spinal cord injury. Car wrecks, one of them, many people can think of is like diving into a pool and, injuring your spine. And this is where you hurt the vertebrae that protects your spinal cord is injured and then injures your spinal cord itself. And that can cause various issues from weakness to paralysis. One of the things that people nowadays being online are running into are carpal tunnel uh, issues, and this is with the peripheral nerves. So there's the median nerve in your hands, and if you are injuring or getting inflamed muscles in your hands, it can start pushing on your median nerve, or sometimes your ulnar nerve, but it's mostly your median nerve, and start to cause carpal tunnel syndrome, which is like weakness and pain in your hand. So people that overuse computers or mouse or sometimes text too much, start to get a lot of pain or weakness or um, sometimes tingling in their hands. So if you are experiencing that um, from working at home all the time, maybe you are getting carpal tunnel. Then there are the neurodegenerative diseases, and I think this is mostly what people think of when they think of like neurological diseases, Alzheimer's diseases, or Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, Huntington's, multiple sclerosis. They think of these um, big, scary type of diseases. This is just a map of the brain of where these type of diseases um, can affect the brain. And oh, I didn't know I made these uh, animations here. Okay, so Alzheimer's disease was full described by a doctor named Mr. Alzheimer in 1906. It's was somebody that really had a problem remembering recent events, uh, like inability to perform basic tasks like brushing their teeth, and had a lot of anxiety or aggression, and started moving into global amnesia, and then eventually needs to require total care. There are approved therapies that have modest symptomatic benefits. And there are a lot of patients, 25 to 35 million patients worldwide with Alzheimer's disease. So there's like a big need for Alzheimer's research. Parkinson's disease is a progressive disease caused by malfunctioning neurons that produce dopamine. So one of the things that controls our emotions and movements. The loss of dopamine causes the neurons to fire irregularly. This results in patients that can't control movements, and they experience tremors, rigidity, and slowed movements. Again, there are some treatments, no cure, and so lots of need for research here as well. Famously, Michael J. Fox has Parkinson's disease and is progressing in the disease. Multiple sclerosis is near and dear to my heart because my doctoral dissertation was on multiple sclerosis. It's an autoimmune disease. So I researched immunology and autoimmune disease. It affects the myelin sheaths. If you remember the neuron cell, what protects the axon is the myelin sheath. It affects the myelin sheaths. So those little protective parts of the neuron get destroyed by the immune system. And that is bad. It's usually diagnosed somewhere between 20 and 50 years of age. And there's about 1 million people affected in the US. There's no cure. And there are some very limited treatments. Famously, Selma Blair came out recently being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and she now walks around with her cane. So, yes, there is a lot of need for research on these progressive diseases. So what protects, we have all these diseases, what actually is protecting us from all of these things. We have some protection. Our skull guards our brain. Our spine or vertebrae protects the spinal cord. The meninges, if you remember meningitis, is the membrane that covers both the brain and spinal cord to provide the cushioning from the hard skull of the brain and or from the brain or the spinal cord jolting against the skull or the vertebrae. And the cerebral spinal fluid cushions both the brain and the spinal cord. So there's like some cushioning and some hardness around all of these very soft things. Those are the main protections, not to mention like the things that are wrapped around the nerves, like the myelin, and then, of course, all of our regular bodily protections, like our skin and our immune system and things like that. But these are the main protections that our nervous system has. But what can we do to help protect ourselves and our nervous system? So your nervous system really needs movement and nutrients as well as energy. So increased activity of the peripheral nervous system really helps strengthen your nerves. In the same way that exercise strengthens your muscles, activity helps strengthens your nerves. So you really kind of want to get out there and exercise. It doesn't have to be like pumping iron, but you don't want to live a sedentary life. You really want to get out there and move. Again, movement is good. I stand to teach just like I would in the classroom, because movement is good for your nerves. Each nerve has a protective coating known as myelin sheaths. Again, those myelin sheaths are so important for protecting your nerves, your neurons. We want them to stay protected. And worn out myelin sheaths have been associated with like Alzheimer's disease and all these progressive neural diseases. So it's important to keep up with B12, which helps keep those protective. And B12 is found in these types of food like salmon, fatty fish, some types like mushrooms and legumes. So you can see that picture on there where it's found in like some shrimps and some livers and things like that. Vitamin B helps protect our nerves from chemical damage, and you can find that in other types of foods like good oils and spinach and some good nuts as well. So you definitely want to look at the different types of vitamin B to help protect your nerves as well. So move, get some good nutrients from food, and stay healthy.